Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
On today's episode of the Kindness Project, we talk about coffee, Norwich, and we have part one of our interview with Steve Dixon from the Sycamore Trust.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Kindness Project. I am one of your meager hosts, meager host Chris Dames. I'm also joined by Charlotte, who's at this current moment trying to arrange a D&D session, and Russell, who is never in a rush. Are you, Russ? Are you ever in a rush, Russ?
I've learned to be patient since I've been working with you, so...
That is true.
You didn't learn that before working with him.
One thing you need when you're working with me, Russ, patience.
I used to kick him under the bed. Now he's paying me back.
Are we talking about that again? The time you kicked me under the bed?
This is my punishment for it.
Forever. Although we have just interviewed Mr. George Kinder, who will pop up in a future episode, and maybe you need to redefine your life plan, Russ. Maybe you need to do a bit of life planning. What do you reckon?
They was very interesting questions.
Which we won't preempt because we want George to share on his podcast. But you know what? What did you find it interesting?
Yeah, it was.
What bit did you find most interesting?
I liked when he was talking about no. Sorry, I'm mentally going through it.
It wasn't only how interesting he was, it was about how passionate he was about...
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah,
I completely agree. You know what as well? If you are, and this is what I really enjoyed, in his mid-70s, to have that degree of enthusiasm about anything, it is a sign to me that he loves it. So please, listeners, if you are listening to this, keep an eye out for the George Kinder interview. It's going to be a bit amazing. Charlotte now is going to tell us what she enjoyed about the interview if she remembers.
You're asking me to do this
Apparently not.
Or not. Do you need a coffee or what? No, anyway, you've listened. I mean, Charlotte's clearly not selling it.
It was good.
It was good. I can't remember why it was good.
He talked a lot about his love for nature, and that he was very passionate about that, which was nice of him, and he's got his passion.
This is what you know what I love. Have you noticed this, Russ? When Charlotte's under pressure, she talks in like this. Russ is on the camera. I mean, you can't see it, listeners, but as he's engaging, he wants to come on the camera. Have you had another haircut, Russ?
I haven't, no.
Is your head that hot that you had to go have a haircut every week?
Oh, God.
Anyway, I love the fact that Charlotte goes through this thing where she starts talking a bit higher pitched every time she gets a bit nervous.
She starts rubbing her eyes as well.
That's because I'm tired and uncaffeinated.
And she's uncaffeinated, like you should be caffeinated at 8 o'clock at night.
I haven't had a single caffeine.
I totally agree.
Have you not had any caffeine today? How come?
Because I didn't want to spend the money to get one at college.
Too stingy to be caffeinated.
Yeah.
I can't get through a day without caffeine.
How dare they? What do they have the prices to?
The chips are £1.50 now, and they're stingy on them as well.
You know what?
Complain,
I don't mind. No, you have just complained. That's what you've just done. I'm not going to complain, but they're being stingy on the chips.
I'm not going to complain to their face.
I'm not going to complain so they can make constructive change. I'll just complain behind their back on a podcast.
I'll buy it. That is totally right, though.
What's totally right?
I bought a pack of mint arrows the other day, and they've shrunk in size.
Well, that actually...
Oh, yeah, but these have shrunk in size and gone up in price.
That's right. Well, I totally agree.
There's a word for both of those things. One's inflation, and this is a genuine word, Russ.
Yeah, go on.
The other one, shrinkflation.
It's when things get smaller.
It's when things get smaller and cost the same.
Yeah.
So how many mint arrows you buying, Russ?
There's 4 in a pack.
4 in a pack. How many packs did you buy?
1.
And And how many times are you buying that pack?
Once. Kelly was,
Whatever.
well, Kelly was at work. She come out and went in the shop.
Oh, and you fancied forming Euro? A board.
Euros.
Well, as you know, I don't want to like sort of show off.
You left me alone for the weekend.
I'm just back from Paris, so I've
The
got
Euro
Euros on
might
the
be
brain.
fruity, but it's definitely not Monero.
Huh?
The Euro might be fruity, but it's definitely not Monero.
Well, I mean, I had quite a lot of French wine while I was away, so I think the fruit that is on my mind.
I think it's still affecting you now, mate.
It's great. I think so.
I got fed a grape earlier.
Who fed you a grape?
Sophie.
Did she?
She just came and handed me a
That's
frozen
a bit
grape.
Roman, isn't it? was you sprawled out on the
No, she just put it in my hand. She just put it in my hand. It was too cold. It'd been in the freezer.
Yeah. So that brings us on quite messily to the question of the podcast, which is, in your opinion, ladies and gentlemen, what is the world's greatest city? Now, I think, what do you think, Mouse?
I've been to a couple of cities, Paris, London, and Bodrum in Turkey.
Bodrum?
I quite enjoyed that, but I was quite young when we went there, 15.
You were covered in mud when you went there, weren't you? Did you do that or not?
We did go in the mud pool. And
you know what?
That
was amazing for his hot head. Putting a bit of cool mud on his hot head. Oh.
Just talking about that though. I was a lot slimmer then. I don't think I'd look so great in mud now.
No. Well, Charlotte really didn't like the mud, did you, when we went to Bodrum?
I don't like muds.
No, I think if you're going to Bodrum, you've got to get involved in a bit of the mud.
I don't like things being stuck.
It's not actually Bodrum. It's in the salt. I can't remember the name of the place, but it's where the salt flats are and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure it was called Ephesus.
Yes, it was Ephesus.
It's not just mud though; it's sand. Like, I don't like the beach because if sand gets between my toes, it gets stuck, and it's really annoying and really frustrating. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And at the beach, they charge £1.50 for chips. And,
you actually get more than you do at the.
Oh, you get more than you do at the college.
And it's only half a portion, you know.
Oh God, you know what? At the beach, I mean, what's worse, chips at the beach or chips at college?
Chips at college.
Chips at college. Why chips at college? Just remind us for the benefit of the listeners.
No.
Why are chips at college so bad? They give me a small portion.
No, I'm not performing in your horses show.
I'll be totally honest with you, though. I'm coming down in a couple of weeks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sorry,
Charlotte's annoyed that I'm not telling her anything at the minute.
Have you not heard about the expo?
Yeah, the Avery Means Business Expo.
I thought it was months away.
No, so it's a month. Why are we promoting the HMB Expo on the Kindness Project podcast?
This is not the point.
I tell you what, our listeners in America, our listeners in Australia, our listener in Madagascar. Listener in Madagascar isn't going to be interested in an expo in London, are they? Let's be honest.
Can I finish? So let me tell you.
How do I mute him again? Go on.
I looked at the petrol prices and thought to myself this morning, I wish I had a gun electric like you have.
You know what? It's the future. It is absolutely the future.
Not really. You've got one now.
Yeah, the future is now.
Yeah, I wish I had a gun electric like you did.
Yeah, no, in other news, podcast listeners, we have now got an electric car. And Russ, Paris isn't my favourite city. It did inspire the question because it is a favourite city of mine. But you know what I love? You can just rent it, and you can do it in London as well, to be fair. But I love a city where you can rent an electric bike or an electric scooter and have a little toodle all about. It's amazing. Apparently, you can do it in Berlin as well.
That does sound right on my street.
What would you go for, a scooter or a bike?
I'd probably go for a bike because I prefer riding a bike than a scooter.
Do you like riding a bike?
I can ride a bike, yeah.
I like stationary bikes.
What?
Yeah.
I
Stationary.
like it when they move. I prefer when they move because you get from one place to another.
I can ride a bike. I'm not bikeless. And
Have you got? Do you own a bike?
no,
Well, you are bikeless then.
I did no, because I can ride a.
Oh,
You
You
put
can
me
ride a
down
bike,
the
you just
rabbit hole
choose
now.
not
I'm taking you down the road, not on a bike. You ain't got one. Anyway,
Moving on.
ladies and gents, please
This
tell
ain't no
us.
bike ride, is it?
Ladies and gents, please tell us what your favourite city is and why. We'd love to know why you love your favourite city. I'm sure there's going to be loads of you who tell us a wide range of cities. I think my favourite city, New York, may be a close second. Still London. Tired of London, tired of life. I stand by that. What do you think?
I like big places.
That's what cities are. If a city was a small place, it'd be a village or a town, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be a city anymore.
If a city was downgraded like one step, it'd be a town, but then another step is a village. And there's a big difference between towns and villages that I'm not going to go into on the podcast.
Oddly enough, talking about London.
So Charlotte didn't answer that at all. She just went, like a 5-year-old would answer that question. I like big places. I mean, that does nothing to help.
I
does
like
it?
big places, not large crowds.
Right.
I like the architecture and the thing, but then the crowds really get me. So I can't really pick a place because the architecture's the thing, but then you've also got to compare.
Okay,
it to
what city has got the best
crowds.
architecture then?
Athens.
It depends on what sort of architecture you're looking
Yeah,
for.
because
doesn't
if you're looking at like modern, postmodern
Yeah, that's right.
architecture, but if you're looking like culturally significant or sort of ancient architecture and the phenomenal nature of it, obviously you'd have to say places like Athens and stuff like that for ancient architecture, but for modern architecture, you'd have to look somewhere.
But this is what I'm saying. London is a place that's got architecture. Cheese grater. Walkie-talkie.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, that was
Am I being factually correct?
my favourite. I mean, and I love visits to tall buildings. So my favourite at the moment is the walkie-talkie. The Sky Garden up the top is amazing, but London has an amazing combination of both fairly old and fairly new buildings in abundance. Actually, there's not that many countries that have got both, I don't think. So Athens hasn't made as much investment in new buildings.
It's so pretty.
I found, I mean, to be honest, I think when we went
Didn't like
a
to
couple
trek
of
up
years
that
ago,
hill, but that was worth it.
Look, I mean, the Parthenon was, I mean, an amazing place to visit. I absolutely loved it. But I don't know whether Athens would be my favourite.
Maybe it's just because I like the sort of the history of the sort of culture of Greece.
Yeah, I like that. I like that mix of medieval industrial. They've got a lot of that in Norwich.
Sorry, are you saying Norwich? Out of all of the cities, sorry. Let me read. This is amazing. Let me read the question again, Russ. What? And give that answer, please. What, in your opinion? What, in your opinion, is the world's greatest city?
Norwich. King's Lynn.
I'll give you one more chance. What, in your opinion, I just like making her laugh. What, in your opinion, is the world's greatest city?
I'm going to go proper chabby now and say West Bromwich.
Stoke. Right.
Peterborough.
Right.
whoever
If Charlotte can come to any sort of senses, I mean, you made her laugh so much. I mean, can I just say, I don't know how many listeners we've got in Norwich, and Norwich may be a lovely place. I've been to Norwich. I think it's an okay place. Would I class it as the world's greatest city? I tell you what, if somebody says Norwich, anybody apart from you, Russ, says Norwich is the world's greatest city, or Kelly, because I know you can put her up to it, or Kay, or anybody, right, that genuinely, if anybody genuinely gives the answer Norwich as the world's greatest city, I will eat my socks. All right? That's how confident I am.
Is that going to be a live episode?
Yes.
I will eat Russell's hat that he never wears.
Look at that hot head.
I almost that's why we don't record later now.
Oh God, here it goes. Norwich. Look, can I just say, other cities are available. No. Norwich is probably a lovely place. I don't know whether it counts in the top X amount of great cities of the world, but anyway, can you let, for genuine answers, apart from Russell's Norwich, if I get Norwich pop up on the answers there, Russ, I know you've put somebody up for it. Can you let people know where they can actually give us a genuine answer that isn't Norwich on the podcast?
Oh yeah. So if you want to find us on Twitter, you go to @OlaKindness. If you want to find us on Facebook, if you put the Kindness Project into the search bar, we should come up. Same with Google, but you have to put the Kindness Project podcast. If you want to find the website directly, it's www.thekindnessproject.co.uk. If you want to email us directly, it's ola@thekindnessproject.co.uk. I don't know what our Instagram is. We've probably got a location in Norwich.
Our office in Norwich. Can we open an office in Norwich, Russ? Can we have a...
We've got an office near Norwich.
We have. You live near Norwich. But can we genuinely, Russ, can you look into this for me tomorrow?
Can we have Kindness Project HQ?
Can we have the Kindness Project headquarters located in what you consider the greatest city in the world, Norwich?
Wait. I never said I consider that the greatest. It has to be Peterborough.
Why are you sort of not including Stoke?
Kelly said Hull.
You know what? Hull was actually a city of culture at one point. So
it was.
It was. Now don't laugh at Hull. There was laugh at Norwich, but not at Hull. There was a lot of investment went into Hull, and at Hull I saw some amazing stuff going on in Hull. So maybe just punch my face in the screen.
You spat on it.
All right. Okay.
While you were talking.
Get excited about Hull. That's why.
Okay.
Also, you haven't quite shaved properly.
Nobody can see that because we're on a podcast.
It's been bugging me for the past hour and a half.
And the fact I've got that little moustache in the wrong place.
I've got a cleaner head than you've got, Chin.
Sorry?
I've got a cleaner head than you've got, Chin.
Rush, you've probably got a cleaner head than I have, Chin.
Yeah,
Right.
they all look like that in Norwich. Right. And on that note, let's move on to the next part of the show. It is
Kindness news.
and we've got two Norwich, and we've got two kindness news. There's Sebi Hall, who looks like he's standing in front of a mountain. It looks like he's from Norwich.
He does
And he's,
not. If he's from Norwich now, I'm gonna.
he's standing. Let me just move that over here so Charlotte can't see it, so I can pretend he's from Norwich.
He's from Staffordshire.
Sebi Hall is a massive en masse Easter egg donator. A teenager who started doing daily acts of kindness to raise £1,000 has now launched a foundation for good causes. Sebi Hall from Lichfield, Staffordshire, started in March 2020 when his school closed due to COVID-19. The 18-year-old who has learning and physical difficulties started the acts of kindness to help people who were lonely because of the pandemic. With the help of his mother, Ashley, he has now set up the Sebi Hall Kindness Foundation and raised nearly £40,000. He just wants to keep going, Mrs. Hall said.
Among his kind deeds, he collected coats to give to the homeless, hid Easter eggs around his village, and near Halloween collected pumpkins, which then were made into soup for those in need. He also bought lottery tickets each week with his pocket money and handed them out to lucky strangers with no strings attached. Part of the money raised by Sebi has helped provide inclusive IT equipment to young people who have disabilities. He also supported the creation of arts and sports activities for young people who are isolated because of disability, disadvantage, or mental health. Sebi, who has a rare chromosome anomaly which has resulted in low muscle tone and speech problems, was invited to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's Carol concert at Westminster Abbey in recognition of his work. He's had letters from Boris Johnson, the Lord Lieutenant of Staffordshire, Mrs. Hall said, who added her son was also shortlisted for a Pride of Britain award. He had about 150 in cash for his 18th birthday, and he insisted on putting it on his Just Giving page. We said, no, Sebi, that's money for you to spend, but he said it would make him happier to donate it. I can't believe it. All he wanted to do was raise 1,000 for doing 100 good deeds, but now he's made such a difference, and he has the Kindness Foundation. It's given him a value to himself. For the last 17 years of his life, someone has always had to do things for him, but it's given him the confidence that spurred him on to show that you can do anything. To think when he was diagnosed, we were told he would never walk or talk or even sit up. He's come from that, and to think of what he's achieved. He was also featured on news outlets across the world since he received a World Compassion Award from the Supreme Master Ching Hai, a Buddhist humanitarian world leader. She awarded Sebi with $10,000, which has enabled him to set up the foundation.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Now, what it shows, with the drive behind you, you can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. Because even though potentially that guy could be focused on his own needs, he's focused on the needs of others, and added so much value in the world. That's amazing. Love that story. Next piece of kindness news I want to share is about an 80-year-old man who walked through a blizzard to rescue 3 cars of people. A retiree rescuer hiked half a kilometre through a winter whiteout to reach a woman that had used social media to alert the local neighbourhood that she was stuck and afraid for her safety. At 80 years old, Andre Bouvier Sr., amazing name, is being hailed as a hero for rescuing not only the woman, but 3 other cars likewise stuck in an impassable blizzard, which locals describe as the Norwich nightmare. Oh no, so the Saskatchewan screamer. Many have had the same thought as Shannon St. Ong when looking at the approach of snow on a weather forecast. That they had time to finish their errands. The director of finance at the First Nations University of Canada, her signature on a cheque required her to drive her usual commute at 25 kilometres from her home in Pence over to the city of Regina. As she was leaving, the winter snow began to fall, and taking a dirt road for better traction on her tyres, she quickly became lost, with no ability to see more than a sliver of the road's edge. After a while, she stopped and called 911, with the operator suggesting she wait out the storm as her temp was full and she was warm. The operator took my information and told me an officer will call me back. Almost 14 hours and counting, nobody's called me to check in. Would the gas tank last until morning? What if I was hit by another vehicle? What if I fell asleep and the tailpipe was blocked? What if I didn't make it home at all? Determined to ensure the safest end to her turn for the worst, she went out in the storm, discovered her location on a road sign, then found a neighbourhood Facebook group for the area she was passing, and effectively put a Google pin on where she was. That's when Andre Bouvier Sr., doing some at-home genealogy research, got a call about St. Ong's situation and bundled up bundling up while ignoring his wife's concern for safety, went out to find her on foot because he couldn't manage to start his tractor. On the way, he found 3 other stranded vehicles, 7 people, and walked a quarter mile there and back, leading the helpless cars one by one to his home. Once we arrived to his house and I parked the car, I got out and jumped into his arms and gave him a great big bear hug. I was sobbing with gratitude, St. Ong said. I was so grateful. Bouvier let the survivors sleep at his house, where they ate and laughed and departed the next morning after he had ploughed the driveway. Bouvier remarked that everyone would have done the same, and it took very few thoughts or courage to help. Amazing stuff. Well done, that man, for being kind, hospitable, and so supportive. So amazing stuff. Next up, we've got the interview. We've got part 1 of our interview with Steve Dixon from the Sycamore Trust. Steve talks about the amazing work the Sycamore Trust does and how we can support people on the spectrum with what they need. Should we listen to the first part of the interview?
Let's do it.
Hi, Steve. How you doing? Welcome to the Kindness Project.
Thank you for having me along.
How's your day been so far?
Quite busy, in actual fact. It's a busy time of year for us at Sycamore. Autism Awareness Week, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, is approaching at the end of March.
Right.
So plenty going on at the moment, and just irregular stuff. I mean, autism is something that people live with for their entire lives. So it's we're always trying to provide as much support as we possibly can, and it's never ending.
Yeah, and as you say, I suppose it's autism is something that people have got to sort of evolve. People cope with during their adult lives as well. And it'd be interesting to talk about how people sort of transition from kids to adulthood with.
It's interesting, Chris, that you say that transition is an extremely important word. It's an extremely important activity, because if you're not really thinking about these things, there are a number of different areas. I mean, there's the transition. Perhaps the most important one would be the transition from junior school to secondary school. For a young person with autism, 11 years old, who is used to the routine of going to junior school, suddenly going to a secondary school where you have to go to different parts of the school to attend different classes, and there are obviously different teachers and maybe a different bus or buses to get to school, and different boys and girls in your class. It's a really big factor. And then, of course, the next transition would be once you leave that school to go on to further education, university, college, or out into the world of work, or transitioning from your parents' house, if that's where you grew up, into your own independent living. So many different ways in which that transition is important, and I'd imagine. I mean,
it's an interesting one because my girls are, and again, Charlotte, who co-hosts the podcast with me, is 18 now, and her transition from sort of college that finishes in sort of July to September is quite an exciting one. And even though there's an elements of fear, she's quite enthused about it. But I suppose if you're in a position where you're on the spectrum, some of those challenges can feel quite overwhelming, right?
Well, there's every chance. I mean, I think it's important to state that at the beginning that autism, of course, as a spectrum condition, there is no obvious
definitive.
Exactly. There's no definitive autistic person. So there might be some people who would say, "Yep, I'm fine with that," whereas others it might be extremely difficult to get used to the idea of going to a different building in a different town or a different part of town and dealing with different teachers and different ways of life. It's a tough period, but as I've said, particularly that junior to secondary school. And one thing we do know is that a lot of people with autism thrive on a regular routine. So if you've had a regular routine for 3 or 4 years and all of a sudden it's completely changed, that will be quite difficult initially.
Okay, and we'll talk about a little bit about that, because one question that I haven't recorded is how some of the people you help has transition both into lockdown and what's happened over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and
the last
how,
couple of years have been really difficult. Some of
as
the young
we
people
as we
we
come out,
support.
because that'd be interesting to
Yeah.
explore. But before we do that, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and how you got involved with the Sycamore Trust.
Okay. I think the first thing I should probably start with is a confession. I am not an East Londoner. I'm a South Londoner, specifically the Southeast. So my journey to Sycamore in Dagenham or Romford can often be quite difficult. But I got involved in Sycamore in 2018. Most of my sort of working life I've spent, believe it or not, in football. I worked at Leyton Orient Football Club prior to Sycamore, and that's how I came to know a gentleman who was well known to the staff at Sycamore, and he recommended me for this particular role, and that was in 2018. I think what's really important about the people at Sycamore is that almost everybody who works at Sycamore has a relationship with autism, and I'm no different. I have an autistic nephew who is now 12. So when I joined Sycamore, he was 8. It gives you an understanding of what it's like. I mean, I would never suggest that I could explain what it would be like to be on the spectrum, but having spent a lot of time around my nephew, I've got a reasonable understanding of how people with autism approach things differently.
Yeah.
Many of our staff at Sycamore are on the spectrum or are close relatives, parents, brothers, sisters, siblings of people on the spectrum, and that really rather drew me to the organisation. I mean, I was quite enthusiastic about getting involved with Sycamore because I felt that it was an important area. I felt that my nephew didn't get enough support, and whilst he doesn't live in the area that is covered by Sycamore services, because we only cover Havering, Redbridge and Barking and Dagenham, I felt like I was doing something to help people in a similar position to him.
Yeah.
So that's how I got involved with Sycamore. I've been at the organisation now since the beginning of 2018. It's coming up for my 4th anniversary, and I really enjoy it. As I said, I worked in a very, very different field prior to coming to Sycamore. Although there are a lot of differences. I mean, trying to raise money for a small
turning point. Well, when did you decide to make the change?
Well, I think I'd got to the point where I enjoyed working in football, but I sort of felt that maybe I would be it would be useful, or it would be good for me to try and do something that could help people with a disadvantage.
Yeah.
People in a sort of slightly more difficult situation. As opposed to trying to generate income for a football club. There's a lot of similarities in some respects. So getting involved with Sycamore has opened my eyes to the way that public services are funded. And I think there's obviously a concern, particularly now as we come out of the pandemic, about the amount of money that's available for people who are fulfilling really essential functions. So there's a lot of similarities, but I have to say I really enjoy what I do now. I like to think that we're doing good work.
Yeah, no, it's really good. So tell me about the work that Sycamore Trust does. Help me understand a bit more about that.
Well, I think that the first thing that should be noted is that autism is a hidden disability.
Yeah.
And it's my view that leads it to be generally quite often overlooked. People just tend not to pay attention to things that they can't see. And I think that's entirely understandable.
Yeah.
So autism is a hidden disability. And I think not only is it overlooked in society terms, I think it's probably overlooked in funding terms as well, because I don't think autistic charities or autistic programs and autistic support gets the same level of income as other equally important programs receive. I should say I'm not advocating that autism should be treated differently and get more money than anything else. I mean, there are so many important conditions out there and so many important people doing good work. I do sometimes feel that that autism, because of its hidden disability nature, is overlooked.
You
So
know what's interesting, Steve? It does touch a lot of lives, doesn't it? Autism. I mean, when I
Well-
think about my friends, family, clients, people I know, and people I work with, there are examples of plenty of people who are on that autistic spectrum somewhere. So it
I
is
think-
quite prevalent, isn't it?
I think that's a very good point. I mean, since I've been involved with Sycamore, I've been. I can't tell you just how many times I've had a conversation which I've explained to someone what I do for a living, and their immediate reaction has been, "Oh, my grandson, or my next door
Yeah.
neighbour's daughter, or one of the guys I work with, his niece, A lot of people seem to know someone on the spectrum. I mean, it's not uncommon. There are around about 700,000 people in the United Kingdom with autism.
Blimey.
And in terms of how that affects family life, that means there are just under 3 million family members that have an autistic brother, sister, son, daughter, grandson, niece, etc., etc. So it's actually quite common. But not a lot is known about it. I think more is being known about it certainly now. But when I was at school, back in before the turn of the century, we probably had autistic children in the class, but they were just considered to be badly behaved because perhaps they couldn't concentrate, or they became disruptive. They were sent to the headmaster's office or to the back of the class. We know more about autism now than we did maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we are doing more about it. And obviously that's a very positive.
And the Sycamore Trust has been around for how long? How was it founded? What's its background?
The Sycamore Trust began 26 years ago as a parental group. It was initially called PACT, which stood for Parents of Autistic Children Together. And it merged with Barking Dagenham MenCap in 2014 to become the Sycamore Trust.
Right.
And it basically evolved out of a lack of services for families that had a member of the family on the spectrum. So it filled a hole. And obviously has grown now to providing a considerable number of support services for families all over Barking, Dagenham, Havering and Redbridge. And for some of the families we support, I mean, I think we're something of a lifeline, because apart from the fact that we're helping in general, we work with a lot of young people. So if we're helping a young person with autism, we're also providing valuable respite for the parents and carers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, that might be the only sort of 2 or 3 hours of the week where they can sort of switch off a little bit and have a little bit of a period of relaxation, because it's difficult when you've got someone with a neurodiversity. I think that your routines are affected unquestionably. So we're doing some really wonderful work across the 3 boroughs. A lot of young people, but we start with young people at the age of 2. We've got a magnificent. It's such an empowering program. It's called Speak with a Picture. And it helps children that have communication difficulties, and it helps them to open a line of communication with their parents by using little cards with pictures of symbols on them. I mean, imagine how frustrating it might be if you had a 3-year-old that you couldn't talk to.
Yeah.
And that 3-year-old couldn't tell you when they were hungry, tired, whether they needed a change of clothes or wanted a drink. It's incredibly frustrating for the child and for the parent alike. So this program opens up a line of communication for children as young as 2 to 3 to 4 years old.
To communicate through images.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's wonderful.
I mean, it's really, the point you made earlier, Steve, was really a really interesting one. And I think we have come on sort of leaps and bounds in terms of being able to diagnose some of these conditions and situations. How good are we now at diagnosis? So are we equipped as a society to diagnose early and therefore support early, or is there still work to do in that space?
I think there's still work to do, and I don't profess to be the expert in this area because I've got no clinical background, but it appears to me, as I'm not going to say as an outsider or an insider, but it just appears to me, knowing what I know, that it depends very much where you live. I hesitate to use the phrase postcode lottery, but it is rather a case of to which local services you're allowed access to, because In some cases, you'll get a prompt diagnosis and you'll get a bit of support. In other cases, you might have to wait a long time for a diagnosis, even though there's evidence to suggest that that the young person may well be on the spectrum. You may have to wait a long time for a diagnosis, and then there's very little support in place when that diagnosis is received. I think perhaps the most common telephone call that we receive at Sycamore Trust is from a parent or carer saying, "We've just had a diagnosis and I don't know what to do. Can you help us?" And obviously the answer to that is yes, we can. But more to the point, I think a lot of it depends on where you live as to what level of support and what level of services you're allowed access to. So,
and are there? I mean, take Havering Mind as an example of a sort of local group to us. I can't believe I'm saying to us, even though you're from south of the river, Steve. I mean, I'll let you off considering you work north of the river.
That's very kind.
But are there sort of offshoots in other parts of London, other parts of the country? How does it work with you?
No, there are no other Sycamore branches. Although we are aware that there are other organisations and charities and support groups that help families and individuals on the autistic spectrum. Every local council is obliged to have what they call a local offer. So if you're listening to this, for example, in an Essex County postcode, or maybe in Newham or Tower Hamlets, you might decide to look on your local authority website, and if you find the page that's called local offer, there will be some special educational needs provision. But of course it varies from borough to borough as to what that provision might be, but they are obliged to provide a level of support. But of course, Chris, as you know, invariably these decisions come down to the availability of the finance. Obviously, I've got no doubt that the boroughs that we deal with, who I say all of which are very supportive, I should add, I've no doubt that they would like to help even more people if they possibly could. But the amount of finance available and the other calls in the public purse mean that they have to take a view of they can afford to help children or young people with a certain group of characteristics, and that means that some go unsupported, and that's probably where we step in, because we look after or help to look after a lot of those people that perhaps don't get support from the local authority.
And one of the things you mentioned, Steve, I think is really interesting and pretty pertinent, because I think with a lot of invisible conditions, the conditions you can't see, sometimes there's a lot of misunderstanding. Do you think autism and people who are on the spectrum are misunderstood? And if so, how?
Yes, I would say that. I mean, and as an example, I'll give you an example of an anecdotal evidence that I know has happened and to people that we support. Imagine parking in a disabled bay at the supermarket and then being told, "Well, your child doesn't look disabled."
Yeah.
No, straight away there is the implication, the mindset, the perception that a disability has to be physical. So straight away that's a factor. I think we are getting better as a society, and I think one of the areas that's been most important recently, and I hate to say this because it does sound a little bit vacant or a little bit flippant, the number of celebrities that have been diagnosed recently. We've seen Melanie Sykes, who is an actress who was, I remember from my youth, she was famous in the 90s. And Paddy McGuinness, his wife Christine, is a model. And they have 3 children on the spectrum. Melanie Sykes is on the spectrum.
And he had an issue, didn't he? I remember it was in the news last year that he parked in a disabled bay.
Right.
And I think somebody pulled him over and said, "Well, why you..." So I think that example you give,
there you go,
is perfect in terms of.
So there was there was a documentary on BBC One just before Christmas, and I know most of the Sycamore staff, we watched that and we talked about it, and I know that 1 or 2 of the staff weren't overly impressed with the programme. I looked upon it because they were looking at it from a clinical perspective, but from my perspective, I said it was on BBC One, not a satellite channel. It was 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. It was prime viewing. There would have been people who watched that programme because it was about Paddy McGuinness, who they like from Top Gear and Question Sport, or they follow his wife on Instagram, but who didn't know anything about autism, never heard the word. And now
They've got
maybe
some
another
awareness.
million people have found out about autism. So I think that program was important, and I think the more that we can have of people in the public eye talk about autism and not understand it but acknowledge it, I think that's better.
And what's the big misconception, Steve? You know, what do people assume about autism and individuals on the spectrum that are probably wrong?
Well, I think the easiest way to say that is that I think most people's perception of autism is probably Rain Man. I think perhaps for you and I, anyway, of a certain age. I think if you're a little bit younger, you're probably thinking about the Big Bang Theory. There's a character called Sheldon, and there was a drama called The Good Doctor, who I think the doctor was autistic. But if you think back to the Dustin Hoffman character in Rain Man, he was a genius, a maths genius. So I think that there is a bit of a misconception that all people with autism are wonderful with numbers, and that can sometimes be true, but it can also sometimes not be true. A bit like an ordinary person. You know, a very good friend of mine had a quite a mid-level, senior level banking job with a major international bank because he was wonderful with numbers. So there is perhaps a misconception that all autistic people are, mathematical geniuses, because that's not strictly true. But, autistic people tend to value order, and obviously numbers never lie.
Yeah. It's factual, isn't it?
It's very factual. Yes, the answer to a mathematical equation will always be the same, however you do it. So consequently, a lot of people with autism do like numbers because they value that factual element.
Gotcha. So that was the first part of the interview with Steve. More next week. And on that note,
here's the end of another podcast. But the end is never truly the end, because the end is always the beginning of something entirely new.
and this beginning is us setting up our headquarters in Norwich. Isn't it, Russ? Russ, genuinely, can you find out whether we can get a PO box in Norwich? The greatest city in the world!
If we want to set up headquarters, it has to be Ipswich.
Oh.
We're doing the grand tour of East Anglian cities now, aren't we?
I know. This is like a tour of East Anglia.
We'll just set up in Cranham. Nothing bad ever happens in Cranham.
Well, we can either do Cranham, or we can do just set up in Russell's house. That'd be easier, wouldn't it? All the kindness projects post comes to, where are you, Necton?
Yeah, Necton, yeah.
I'm not going to give out your address, Russ, don't worry. I don't know your address, to be honest. So, right. So the last week's question of the podcast was, what's the best game you played as a kid? I think I said British Bulldog and games on my Commodore 64. Marco Halloran reckons it was Run Out. Deborah Meyer said French skipping. Is that like French kissing? Curbsies, and slightly ashamed to say, Knock Down Ginger. Russell Dames answered Norwich.
Yeah, right. Knock Down Norwich.
Knock Down Norwich. Knock down. What did you say, Russ? What have you put in the chat? They should knock down Norwich. Out of order, Russ.
Sorry to be
other mediocre East Anglian cities.
What did he actually say?
He said, "Sensible World of Soccer. It was a great game. I don't really remember playing outdoor games much." Sandra Conlington said, "Elastics, Peavers, Kirby, Bellies, and of course haggis chasing." Apparently they're all Scottish. And the original TV tennis game, can't remember its name. It was on a black screen. That was Pong, Sandra. Alice Joy used to play 40-40. Steve Dan used to play Kiss Chase. Paul Middleton used to play Cheney Heen, where you could only be caught tagged by a chain of people. I thought that was called something different. I thought that was called...
I've never played that.
Oh, I can't remember. Chris Haycock used to play a game called Jet Set Willie. I can say that is an actual game, not just a joke. Mark Eccles used to play British Bulldog and Space Invaders. Emma Tanier used to play Manic Miner on the Commodore 64 and Elastics. I don't know what Elastics is. Do you, Russ?
No.
Monopoly, Justin Gaffney used to play. Mark Bartley used to play his Spectrum 1 to 8K. Jade Foster Jarrett used to play Tin Can Alley. Chris Thomas used to love a pack of playing cards.
Oh, yes.
He used to carry a set around with him anytime he travels. Coincidentally, the same as Phileas Fogg going around the world in 80 days. Nicola Taylor loved a bit of French skipping. And on Twitter, we had no answers at all. So bad show, Twitter. And I've just broken my computer. And on that note, that's the end of another show. Thank you for listening to the Kindness Project. As always, it's been a pleasure. I've been London Chris. This has been Cranham Charlotte. And that has been Norwich Russ. Have a lovely evening.
Sorry.
And we'll see you next.
Just hold on. Nectum Russ was a fan of Norwich.
Sorry.
Norwich lover Nectar Russ.
I'm London Lover Chris. Charlotte's Cranham Lover Charlotte. And that is Russ. See you later. Have a lovely day and we'll speak to you soon on the Kindness Project.
Bye.
Bye.